Right, we're going to take one more hour, and we're going to take that hour and spend some time talking about what's happening downtown Boston with our Boston City Council. I want to give you an update on the radio station, things that are happening here. Some things are very exciting, and other things just some thoughts that random thoughts I'd like to share with you today. I'm Pastor Bruce Wall. You're listening to Boston Praise Radio and TV, and you're also listening to Boston Black News and 102.9 FM radio. We have a lot happening here at the station. Today at, I believe it's going to be 11 a.m., we're going to have a group of young people in the studio. They are going to be broadcasting for the first time. We have what is called the Academy of Broadcasting that's operating out of our church this summer. The Academy of Broadcasting was here last year and was also here a number of years ago. And we've been trying to get the Academy of Broadcasting up and going. And so we have a group of teenagers who are here Monday through Friday. They're here early in the morning until the afternoon, the late afternoon, if there's such a thing. And they are learning how to be broadcasters. They are learning how to host their own broadcasts. I even approached the director, Anita Hamilton, and asked her if it was possible for the young people to do a drama broadcast. Many years ago, drama broadcast was happening on many different radio stations rather than the broadcasters, the drama broadcasters actually broadcasting at a play or involved in a play. They would come to the studio with their script, and they had sound effects, and they would actually read their lines over the microphones. And because you couldn't see them, it was just radio, no internet, no television. It was just radio. Somebody would make all of the sounds. They would have the script, and they would make all of the sounds that were needed, whether it was the sound of a horse galloping or whether it was a police siren. All the sound effects will be made in the studio, and the actors would perform for maybe 1 hour, and that was called drama on the radio. And it was exciting. We had a gentleman come to the radio station before the pandemic, and this he was an actor, and he had acted in a couple movies with I think it was Denzel and a few other actors, and he showed me his portfolio, and he wanted to do drama on radio. And so we were working it out. He had come back a couple times to talk to me, look at our radio station, trying to figure out what they would need. And then the pandemic hit, and I have not heard from this gentleman since the pandemic came and wiped everything away. So today our young people will be broadcasting for the first time. Just a second. I have Pastor Randy Nabels who's calling me, so I'm going to turn my sound down. That was Pastor Randy. He is actually in Africa, and he was calling in for his broadcast at 9 o'clock this morning. And I said, Pastor Randy, It is only 8 o'clock in Boston, and you're going to have to come back in at another time. So Pastor Randy will be on the air with me at 9 o'clock. Again, he's in Africa. I think it's Kenya, not 100% sure. But we will be talking and dialoguing today. So going back, today at 11 o'clock, our young people will be hosting their first broadcast. It's their premiere broadcast. I hope that you'll be able to tune in. I hope that you'll be able to listen to the broadcast and find a way, whether it's on social media or whether it's by calling in, to call in and encourage them. Let them know that they're doing a great job. I want these young people to really be uplifted by those of you who listen to us. If you listen on this past Sunday, Sweet Lamb's broadcast at 4 o'clock on last Sunday featured a young man by the name of Cameron. And Cameron is one of the co-directors of this Academy of Broadcasting here at Boston Praise Radio and TV and Boston Black News. And he was the featured guest on Sweet Lamb's broadcast. And he is he is talented, very gifted, and a young man who is actually going places in his life. He's a freshman at college, and he'll talk about that later on today, what college he attends. But we're very pleased with his growth. And I was very pleased with his performance and his interview here on Boston Praise Radio and TV. I want to say good morning to my sister Christine, who is watching us on Facebook, and to all the others who will be joining us this morning. So, there are so many radio stations in our city and in our state that have gone through a lot of changes. I've been on so many different radio stations in Massachusetts and across the country. And radio stations are changing because the internet is taking over the broadcast industry. And one day I was in my automobile listening to WBZ radio. And as I was listening to WBZ radio, I heard a commercial for WRKO on WBZ. And I couldn't put that together until I found out that both of those stations are under the iHeart Radio title, and they've consolidated. They're still separate radio stations, but they're working together. So in order for AM and FM radio stations to survive, they are now combining their sound, their resources, their staffing, and they are consolidating under iHeartRadio, and that's how they're able to survive. We, on the other hand, we are under TuneIn Radio. TuneIn and iHeart do the same thing, and TuneIn and iHeartRadio have combined efforts to keep the radio stations going under the banner of internet radio stations. So our station is also going through some transition, and you can notice that because I haven't been on the air talking for a while. A lot of our broadcasts have been rebroadcast because we're trying to figure out where we're going, how we're going to get there. I was talking to Ron Bell the other day, and we were talking about Boston Black News and where we're going with Boston Black News. And in an ideal world, I would hire a group of people to come into the studio and run the studio, run the station, run the broadcast throughout the entire day. All you need is about 5 people Monday through Friday, the same people who could come in and do your news in the morning, do your news in the afternoon, broadcast up until the evening, come back the next day and do it all over again. But in order to be able to do something like that, what you have to do is that you have to hire these broadcasters to come in and do their job. And we're not there yet, but we're trying to figure out how we can bring broadcasters in and have them broadcast the vision of having them broadcasting every day and selling the broadcast, the entire day of broadcasting, to sponsors, and have sponsors pay the radio station so that we can pay the broadcasters. That's the way to go. If we want our radio station to grow, we're going to have to hire broadcasters to come into the studio and broadcast on our network. One of the stations that I was on, and I looked it up today, was WRCA 1330 AM radio, and it is in Cambridge on Massachusetts Avenue. And I used to travel from my house in Hyde Park to 1330 AM radio. I think I was doing it every morning. I did it every single morning. And I believe I was on the air from 7 to 8 or 6 to 7 every morning. So I would travel over to Cambridge and broadcast. And I did that when the station was a 5,000 watt station, which was a significant wattage station. And then it grew and became a 25,000 watt radio station. So the power of the radio station grew, and then they brought internet into the radio station, and I was there for quite a while. I had many different broadcasts on that station. And then Bloomberg purchased the station, 1330 AM. They purchased the station, and so now Bloomberg is now broadcasting on 1330. 1410 AM radio was a radio station that Renee, Pastor Hobbs, and I, and my church, we were looking at that radio station, 1410 AM. It broadcast out of Framingham, I believe, and we were looking at that station, and we were going to make an offer to purchase the radio station. And then the owner of that radio station and many others, that owner passed away, and the radio station was taken off of the market. That station is now silent. It hasn't been on the air for now 4 to 5 months. It hasn't been on the air. So that station might be shutting down for good. AM and FM radio stations are in transition. Let me say it again. AM and the FM radio stations are in transition. And I said to my team that one day I am going to transition out of being a pastor and transition out of this church. There will be a new pastor in this church, and I'm concerned what will happen to our radio station when I transition out. And I want to talk about that at the latter part of this broadcast. But I just want to whet your appetite that we need to have a plan for my transitioning out of the church, and we need to have a plan for my transitioning out of the radio station, because Renee, Pastor Hobbs, and I have put a lot of blood, sweat, and even tears into the station. A lot of our financial resources have gone into the station to keep it up. Ron Bell has been helping us financially to keep the radio station up and going. And in order for us to survive this period, we're going to need a plan. So we'll talk about that at the latter part of the broadcast. Say, what's happening? What's happening with the Boston City Council? I've been around for a long time. I was around when City Councilor Dapper O'Neill would stand up and speak with that powerful voice, booming voice that he had, and challenge the other city councilors or reporters to listen to what he had to say and to do what he was advising that the council do. He was some character. He was an individual who was very loud, very aggressive, and he took no prisoners. That was Dapper O'Neill. I remember when Chuck Turner was in the city council pounding on the table and challenging the other councilors to listen to his side of the argument. And he was very strong, very aggressive, and very deliberate in his articulating his position on a myriad of issues. And he was a very powerful speaker, and he was able to mobilize people in the community to get around what it was that he was trying to bring to the city council and actually have become a part of the council record. To the reality, to the fact. I am going to see who is on the telephone right now. Caller, you are live on the air.
Peace. Good morning. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, young man. How are you? What and what is happening with the Boston City Council, man?
Well, it's funny, and in many ways, this is, you could foresee it, as you just were talking about Dapper.
Yeah.
I worked in city council at this time,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, that's right.
And
yeah.
I was there, and I got to see Dapper in his later iteration. That was when he was older. He left for a while, came back in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
And Jim Kelly was there, and Mickey Roach was there as well. So I got a crash course into some of these, what I will call parochial politics in Boston, right? Now, Dapper, as you should know, recently I've called to remove the naming of the Jim Kelly Bridge in South Boston.
Yeah.
That's tougher because that's a state thing, Department of Transportation, all that. But the one that is immediately fixable is the Dapper O'Neill name for the hearing room 801 in City Hall, which is where they have a lot of their hearings for zoning and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So that's something that is doable. Your guest on the radio show, he was on Mamleo Saturday, right?
Right. Council President Ed Flynn.
Ed Flynn,
yes.
Right. So, he is in agreement with even removing the Dapper O'Neill name from the city.
Yes.
He's not there with me on the Jim Kelly Bridge, but Dapper O'Neill naming in the city, he agrees, and it's because of as does Deval Patrick agree with Jim Kelly. Some other people, Yancey agrees as well. Dapper. Well, I don't know if Yancey agrees on Jim Kelly. Let me not state, but I know he did express agreement with Dapper O'Neill removing. So the thing here is that you got a guy like Dapper who was a guy of his time, a dinosaur, Archie Bunker in the flesh.
Yeah.
And he said things that offended women, not just black women, just regular old white women.
Right.
Right. He was offensive to them too. Then of course, gay folks. I just read this other day. At that time, there was a openly gay city councilor, David Scondrus.
Yes, I remember that well. Yeah.
And O'Neill, this is at the when AIDS came out. O'Neill said he didn't want to sit next to him in the council because he could catch AIDS.
That's crazy that they got away with that.
This is what I'm saying. There were other things that he said to gay people, Latino people. After the Puerto Rican festival, I think he said, "I wish we could just lock them all up or something." All these criminals. I forget the word that he used, but it wasn't friendly. Mm-hmm. When the Asian influx went over there in the Fields Corner, he began calling it, I think, Little Saigon or something. He was just offensive to all groups of people. I actually made this joke with the last seminar I did with Black and Jewish relations, The only group that I hadn't heard Dapper or Jim Kelly offend were the Jews. But I bet if you would ask them a direct question, I bet they weren't too fond of them either. Okay.
Well, explain in your words now how they were able to get away with that. That would never be tolerated today. That would cause a little skirmish in the council, I think.
Well, it caused skirmishes back then. You know what I mean? People, quote unquote, weren't going for it back then either. But also, too, look, we are going for it now. Look how I introduced the concept of taking this man's name down. I'm not going to chain myself to city council. I'm not going to dress up in funny clothes. I'm not going to, as I told Ed Flynn, I'm not going to, go outside his house with signs that call him, Never Ready Eddie. Right. You know what I mean? Right, I'm not going to come up with creative names for these people. Yeah. I'm not doing any of that. I just present an argument that's salient, well documented. You agree or you don't agree, then let's move forward. So to me, I'm trying to focus just on, what do we do in these modern times while everybody is talking about dismantling and deconstructing racism and the city, all the stuff about race, and also, too, for those white members of the city council who have now been marginalized and in many cases vilified, right? This is a heck of an olive branch. Here's a way that you can win some instant goodwill. Right? It ain't going to solve all the racial problems in Boston, but it's a step in the right direction.
Well, how is Councilor Erin Murphy? Have you approached her? Has she responded to what it is that you're proposing?
I actually would have to go back and refer to my emails. I mean, no one has said no. You know what I mean?
But have they said yes?
Some have said yes, but see, then here's the thing, which is what I realized. What do y'all Christians say about how God answers prayer? Yes, no, or wait. Right? So it's much like that with how the city moves. So right now I'm in the wait stage.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Okay. I've got some yeses. I haven't gotten any adamant no's. It looks like, the Boston Globe editorial board agreed. Once again, former Governor Deval Patrick agreed on the... Mm-hmm. So this seems like it should be a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. Particularly when you uncover some of the terms. Let's go to the Jim Kelly thing for a minute. Mm-hmm. The bridge being on the state level. Here we have our first openly gay mayor, lesbian mayor, right? Mayor, pardon me. Governor. Mm-hmm. Right? In Maura Healey. And if you were to read, we couldn't read some of the statements that these people said on your broadcast because some of them are just too vulgar. Mm-hmm. Okay? But some of the things that Jim Kelly, if you take away the offenses to the black community, if you take away offenses to the Latino community, Asian community, whatever, and if you only are self-interested as the first gay governor, right, just the comments that he made about the LGBTQ community, both of them,
right, sure,
are able to be, are cancelable.
And that would be a win-win for the governor, in my opinion.
It's a win-win for everybody
to take that kind of a stand, yeah.
And how long? Look, the reason that a place like South Boston bears the reputation is because of their unwillingness to let go of their former rock stars and heroes. Mm-hmm. So it's like, wink, wink, we've changed a lot. Yeah, but that's our guy, though. Well, your guy was not good. Mm-hmm. So if that's your guy, you still haven't changed that much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. So let me push you a little to the left here. What's going on with Michael Flaherty? Why do you think Michael Flaherty made the intentional decision to step down as a city councilor? Why?
I think his wife came to him and said, Mike, what are we doing? No, but for real. And actually, too, I was surprised at his length of service because I thought it was longer than that. I was like, wow, that's when he came in? Because he actually came in after I was out.
Right, and again, he was in and out and then back in again. So there were a lot of years he wasn't sitting in the council.
Right, and then also, too, remember when he ran for mayor and they were doing that tag team thing with Flaherty and Yoon?
Yeah, boy.
Remember Sam Yoon?
Yes, I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, who I liked, and God bless him wherever I think he's still in D.C. now, or whatever. God bless him and his family, wherever he is. But yeah, so I mean, Flaherty has been one of those guys, which is kind of funny because we're not too far off in age, which I also didn't realize until this thing. He's only a couple years older than me. And so while he comes from the quote-unquote old school, he's been able to kind of evolve and work kind of both sides of the fence, if you will, right? So he's maintained, he doesn't have the bombastic reputation of the Dapper O'Neills and the Jim Kellys of yesteryear, right? Even though he comes from that same kind of school. But he's kind of the next generation, a little bit, to quote George Bush, a little kinder, gentler, maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And therefore has been able to maintain some relationships in the black community and the Latino community and so on and so forth. Now, does everybody, love him? Absolutely not. And, you're never going to achieve that. But, he's worked all these years. I can't remember any kind of, big scandal. So he's kept his nose clean reasonably as well. Once again, I can't remember any major scandal. He's done the job. He's represented his constituents. He's come out of the zone of his own quote unquote comfort zone and base. Been on broadcasts like yours several times. So the man deserves it. I know he's also a lawyer, so he can certainly go off into the private sector. He indicated he's going to continue to do things to organize in Boston, so he may start a nonprofit or a super PAC, or who knows what's in store for Flaherty.
Again, he's an attorney, and he works with a firm, so I think he's going to land the plane. He's going to be okay. But he also said not only is he retiring because it's time, he was also talking about what's happening on the council, and that's also bothering him. How do you define what's happening on the council?
I'm going to say it's devolving, and I want to use some overarching terms here. So it's just when we talk about certain things like decorum, when you talk about like the auspicious body, these type of things, it just I don't know how to explain it, but okay, let's use old black Hollywood and let's use today's Hollywood, okay, or today's entertainment with back. Like it's like comparing Diane Carroll to Cardi B. See, there's both human, both beautiful women and all that good stuff, but there's something about the elegance, the class, the mystique. Diane Carroll, you might have saw her back in a backless gown or something. You know what I mean? There was still a mystique there. There was, like I say, class and all these type of things. So I think that there's an overall level of a deterioration of civility, let's say.
Yeah.
Which is why I try to conduct myself the way that I do, because even as a person who is a protester, even as a revolutionary, even as a guy who has had to discuss some very hard issues, I've never had to call you names to do it.
Yeah.
I've never had to, rant and rave and shake my fist at the sky or whatever. If you can't, in my opinion, if you can't document it, if you can't research it, if you can't articulate it in a sane, almost clinical manner, then to me that's part of the problem.
Well, let's go to because I had pulled the names of some of these city councilors today. Kendra Lara, I'm thankful that she is okay, and I'm thankful that her son, if I believe it was her son who was involved in that crash, that the son's okay. But I don't understand the driving without a license, an expired registration. I don't understand that. Have you probed or stepped into that at all?
So once again, just on the human level, once again, yes, glad everything is okay. Right. But that's one of those tragedies, and I think about it like if I was talking to my daughter, and in no way I'm not talking about like Kendra's young. Although she probably is young enough to be my daughter, that's not what I mean. But I just think about it like if this was my daughter or any woman close to me or whatever, it's just one of those, what was you thinking?
What were you thinking?
You know what I mean? Yeah. And so because in this position. I understand people get overwhelmed and whatever. You call it a lapse in judgment or whatever. But at the end of the day, there was some negligence there in terms of just handling her business, because apparently from what they're talking about, Connecticut 2014 or whatever. I mean, listen, confession time, Pastor. I'm driven on a suspended, revoked license, all sorts of stuff.
Yes, I remember.
Right. And a lot of that, too, if you really remember, was when I was taking care of my grandmother. The courts had taken my license due to child support that I did not and do not owe. But they took my license, and the court said, yeah, you can't be driving. Like, I take care of my grandmother. If she has to go to an appointment, I'm driving. Now, the good news is the car was registered and insured, so that's the other part. Right? So you have the one part about the lapse of your individual thing with the personal license, which she should have cleaned that up, and I know she's probably kicking herself now.
Right.
But then the other part, which is, even in my opinion, even more serious, an unregistered, uninspected, uninsured car. That's the problem there. Uninsured.
Right, sure.
Because now that you hit something else,
who's going to pay for that? She has to pay for that. That's on her.
Yeah, and these, the other people's insurance company is not going to be hearing no sob stories.
Right.
So, yeah, so that's a very sticky wicket. And then the other flip side of that is, as it has been reported, her guy friend, I guess this is the owner of the vehicle. Then also, too, guys out there, if you're going to give your lady friend a vehicle, make sure it's registered and insured.
He's facing charges now on this whole thing.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's right to call it. Well, I guess they are called charges because it's not like it's criminal.
No,
but
it's a charge.
Yeah, it's a charge. It's a charge. Yeah. So those type of things are just completely avoidable. And also too, the cars are 2019, so it's not like this was some hoopty.
Right.
You know what I mean? 1987 or something like this, right? This is a 2019 car, so I mean, I think that both of them should have just. And once again, I bet they're both kicking themselves in the head now because it just was completely avoidable. Should have never happened. It's a huge embarrassment, and now, she's going to have to face the consequences. And the largest consequence, is losing some of the public trust and faith. And the apology and all that, that's all nice, but a lot of people are just going to be like, meh, I don't know about that.
So is it? Can she redeem herself? Can she get back into the good graces of her constituency? Because people were calling for her to step down, to resign. But if it was me, with the election so many months away, I'd let the electorate make that decision. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. It's tough. It's tough to be in the spotlight, but as you know, for being a Bible man and whatnot, it talks about, staying away from even the appearances of evil or wrongdoing, right? So to me, it's like when you're in this position, you got to know, like, even more scrutiny is on you. You know you're doing this. So that's where you just got to, I mean, look, let's say I had won when I ran for office, right? Everybody knows I drink beer, right? Now, if they catch me drinking beer in City Hall, that's my problem. That was a dummy move. Right? And that's what I mean. So some of these type of things, and once again, I was just using myself in that example and trying to put some of my own personal thing into it. But, just you have to conduct yourself accordingly to the job or the position that you have, if that's what you're trying to maintain. And once again, in the day of Uber and all of this, I mean, it's just too many options. For that to happen. So I just going to chalk that up to like a lapse of judgment, not thinking, kicking themselves in the butt right now, woulda, coulda, shoulda, and just let that be a lesson for anybody else out there as well, and not for nothing. If you're at a bar, you have too many drinks, call you an Uber,
right?
Have a friend drive you home,
right.
Whatever, any type of thing where these type of things, and I'm not implying she was intoxicated at all. This is a different subject now.
Yeah, right.
I'm just saying, if in any situation where you could get yourself jammed up from driving or jam somebody else up, hurt somebody else or whatever, it's just not worth it. Just take an Uber, call a friend. It's just too many options.
Right.
Hire a driver. So that type of thing just, it's unfortunate that it happened. And the last thing I'll say on that is, as with a lot of these other things that have happened, with this group of elected officials on the city council, but even at other levels, it casts a negative shadow on all of us. So it looks bad for all of us. When if you even think about it, when these athletes or these entertainers make some big mistake or whatever, it reflects badly on all of us. Look at the police. When some officer does something, some rogue cop does something, it affects our buddy Larry. He didn't do nothing. But it still casts a shadow of aspersion on him too.
Yeah.
See? And that's the thing. So it's like, all of us need to do better. Community activists, organizers, we need to do better. Candidates need to do better. Those who are already elected need to do better. The church needs to do better. I mean, name a group that doesn't need to do better.
Well, I'll name another city councilor that has gotten a lot of heat, Ricardo Arroyo. What do you think his chances are on keeping his seat with the number of people who are running against him?
Well, yeah, once again, it's quite unfortunate, once again, avoidable things. Let's start with the last one first, the conflict of interest. I'm not a lawyer, and I've never played one on TV, but I think I would have understood that was a conflict of interest even before I was in office, just as a brother representing another brother. As a brother and a friend or whatever, we might talk off the record, but as the actual legal representation for you, I might just try to use all my influence and knowledge to try to hook you up with somebody else who's not your brother to do the best job. So, and just to what we just talked about, to avoid even the appearance of wrongdoing. See, that's what people get messed up. But it's like, you might not actually be doing wrong. Let's say if you were going to a woman's house at 8 or 9 o'clock at night, you might not be actually doing nothing wrong, right? But it looks funky.
It looks bad, yeah.
See? So you don't even do that, right? And that's what I'm talking about. So it's like we have to hold ourselves to a higher thing. So to me, that was super avoidable. The other things around the Kevin Hayden campaign and election and all this type of thing, I just thought that was really sad. And I just thought that was, some low-level stuff that came out into the public sphere that is really, once again, beneath these offices. And, we say in the streets, I ain't got to cheat you to beat you.
Right.
So, I just want to go fair and square with you like I did with Tito. You know what I mean? I had some pretty scandalous information about Tito at the time, but I wasn't going to release that. I'm just going to whoop on you in this debate we got coming up on Thursday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of my philosophy, but others don't share that. So it was amazing to see in that so many low roads that people were willing to take in pursuit of power. And then the other thing was just the lying to the bar and about those previous sex allegations. And to me, that's the worst, because he claimed that he had no knowledge of it, and I just don't find that to be possible.
Well, it's going to be interesting, again, watching this race. And then you've got Frank Baker, who's made an intentional decision. I'm stepping down. Barry Lawton is one of the, is it two other people who are running, or three other people who are running, four altogether? What do you think Barry's chances are? He was actually on on a broadcast, Leon Rock's broadcast, talking about his candidacy. Have you seen? I
mean, Barry's a good guy, and he's certainly smart and knowledgeable. But once again, you know me, to keep it real, I don't know what his chances are. That's a very tricky district. And I don't know how he's going to resonate throughout the entire district. That's a good point, because I've been looking up people on OCPF. I haven't looked him up.
So
it'll also be interesting. Yeah, to see how much money he has, and so on and so forth. That's not my area, so I'm not getting mailings or anything. I can tell you that I did go to the well, sometimes I go to that little plaza over there where the Staples is, yes, on Morrissey Boulevard.
Yeah, yeah.
And there was one of the candidates out there, a white lady, I forget her name, but she was out there actively campaigning and asking me to sign. I was like, I don't even know you. You know, do you have any information? So she gave me her information. I read it, what have you. So seems like a decent enough person. I don't know who else is out there, but ultimately the voters of that district will decide. And I'm just in the reality, you know, because a lot of these people in other races, particularly at large, are talking about their front runners, and they are the most experienced in the race, and they have, you know, under $100 in their campaign account.
Well, okay, so here's a thought that I've been wrestling with. I haven't thought it through well enough to even present it right now, but I'll do it in hopes that you won't hurt me. There are so many people who put themselves forward, put themselves out there to run for public office, and some of them need to, I'm going to be crass just to make the point, some of them need to be in a mental health facility. I mean, don't you think there needs to be some litmus test? There needs to be some way of discerning whether or not this person is even emotionally capable of serving in office? Because we've got some people who should never be running for public office, and they are.
So I've brought this up before, and it's unfortunate because, see, this is one of those downfalls of democracy. So in a democracy, you know, anybody can run. You know, in California, like, you know, they've had porn stars run. They've had people dressed up in costumes. Even up here in, like, New Hampshire or Vermont, there's a guy with a boot on his head. He calls himself Vermin Supreme. And, you know, so there's a cast of characters who, you know, is basically anybody could participate in the political process and say, I want to run for office.
Remember there was a clown running for mayor? Remember that?
Absolutely, yes. I confronted that person.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So this is exactly what I'm talking about, and because you're playing with people's lives and, you know, future. Yes, I do think that there should be some sort of thing. A mental thing would be great, but also too, I had one person who I know who I advised to not run for office.
Okay.
The person did not listen and, you know, went gung-ho anyway. The very first thing I saw on Facebook was like an advertisement flyer, or whatever you would call it, graphic, and he announced himself running for city councilor. But he spelt it like camp counselor.
Oh, gosh.
And so I immediately was like, hey, bro, look, I'm not going to be giving you advice and all this type of stuff like that, but just, this one's for free. It's spelled counselor, and I spelled it the correct way. And this is, you know, so yeah, you shouldn't be able to run for a job that you don't even know how to spell. Right? So not only should there be some sort of mental thing, but there should be like some basic thing. Like, okay, you're running for city council. What is a city councilor? What do they do? When does the city council meet? What's the role of the president? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Look, ask them a trick question. How are you going to work when you do legislation at the State House?
I think some Boston City councilors would try to actually answer that question and not know that that's not your purview of responsibility. Oh my.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I'm just looking at a number of folk that have said that they wanted to run, and I said, I wouldn't want this person representing me in the council. And
okay, so now let's go back to Flaherty for a second.
Okay.
One reason, Michael Flaherty, I hope you listen, one reason I'm mad at you is because by him pulling out, now what that means is there is no preliminary.
Oh, so they're all going to the final.
Yeah, so I wish he would have just pulled out just after the preliminary, Flaherty. Give me one. Come on, give me a break.
Sure.
You know, so, so now there's 8 candidates for 4 at-large seats.
Okay.
And obviously you have the incumbents in Julia Mejia, Ruth Z. Louis Jin, and Erin Murphy. right? So those are the incumbents, and now you have five new contenders. And once again, now that it's down to 8, there'll be no preliminary, so everybody's just going on to the finals. So some of these people locked up by the skin of their teeth because they were never going to make it anyway.
Yeah.
And that what that does is that's dangerous for the voters, because those who don't do their research now might actually, this could potentially be a problem. And places like the Herald, in which I read an article the other day, which actually got me very upset, because they're doing articles now with no fact checking. So if I'm running for office, like I did before, and I'm running now, and the Herald does an interview, what if I tell them I used to be an astronaut?
They didn't go back and in fact checked what the people are saying before they published the article?
To my knowledge, no, because they let some pretty braggadocious, surreal claims go through unchallenged. So, for instance, certain people declared themselves as, I'm a front runner. $56 in their bank account.
Yeah.
You see? So, I mean, these types of things, and once again, this is not to hurt people, but this is the type of, we are in such a dire condition, and you know what's not going to get us out this condition?
What's that?
Delusions and incompetence. So, we're in an emergency situation. We need an emergency operator. Okay? I can drive, but I'm not a NASCAR driver. Okay? Big difference. I've been in planes, but I'm not a pilot. So a lot of these people who are like, ooh, I could do it. Some of the worst things that could have happened is if they do win. And let's look at that in our past. I will submit to you, and this is no besmirching. Once again, this is not trying to hurt people, but once again, the guy I ran against, Tito Jackson at the time, later on he ran for mayor. Had Tito become mayor, do you know the troubles we would be in right now? That could have been the worst thing for black people in Boston. Not because he's a bad guy. Due to incompetence. So yeah, we want a black mayor, we want a black leader, we want all those things, but
I think, I'm concerned about that. I'm very concerned. And then the last thing that I would ask you, this whole the threats coming to Tanya Fernandez, have you been following any of that at all?
Absolutely.
And why is she becoming the target of these threats? I'm sure other councilors receive threats, but she's really, they're bothering her, and she's been talking about them publicly. Why is she the target?
So, I mean, that's, really easy. I mean, number one, she's Muslim, so we can start there. Number two, Cape Verdean, right? 3, outspoken. Let me add another one in there, too. 4, beautiful. People hate her. They hate her. And I think that all that type of stuff is like, just you get to focus and fixate on it just, she checks all the little boxes of all the things that, really tick them off. You know what I mean?
She's on ways. She's sharing Ways and Means, correct?
Oh, of course, right. Then I wasn't even getting into the political thing, but of course, her thing on the budget, her stances on police, all sorts of political stances she's taken. But I mean, they could be talking about something as mundane as sidewalks or something, or parks, and she's still going to get the flack because she is this Cape Verdean, Muslim, outspoken woman, and how dare she?
Yeah, she's going to have to be careful, because I call them the crazies, have focused on her. I know they're looking at others, but she's the one that's getting the bulk of these calls, according to statements coming out of her office. So she's got to be careful.
Oh, absolutely. And unlike other people who have made these same claims, both activists and elected officials, she's actually produced. But a lot of people do this for attention, or they'll exaggerate. I get death threats all the time, and you got one letter that said, "Hey, screw you, I don't like you." You know what I mean?
Right. Keep talking. I gotta answer the door. It's your broadcast.
Go ahead.
Now.
All right. Yes, sir.
Oh no. Go ahead. Pastor Hobbs took it. Keep talking anyway.
All right. Yep. So people like her, who have actually shown proof. She's not just, doing this for drama or for pity, sympathy, or to raise money. You know what I mean? She's actually receiving threats. And I would also submit to our people in Boston, that goes to show you that, the new Boston ain't so different from the old Boston. And once again, if we really are talking about change and being different, well, I can't tell. And this is also another excellent opportunity for those white city councilors, as I said on one of your previous broadcasts, to stand up. I know Ed Flynn made a statement, but I think that the statement collectively could even be stronger with a plea out to their own constituents, saying that if any of you is doing this thinking that you're working on our behalf or in furtherance of our goals or causes, you're not helping.
Yeah. I remember that. And we have just a few more moments. There was a story in the newspaper last night and today regarding Ed Flynn challenging the police commissioner of the police department regarding this overtime crisis that they said they're facing. Do you know anything about that?
Well, I know that certainly there is an overtime crisis in terms of, they get more requests for overtime than they could, reasonably fill. And therefore, that those folks who, are on that overtime thing, because a lot of the people, particularly if you're a single man or something like that, some people are gobbling it up and able to double and triple their salaries, right? Mm-hmm. Others are overworked and so on and so forth. So I know that is a problem. But, the overtime system in general, I think, is just a recipe for disaster because the whole thing needs to be revamped. It's too much, at the trough.
So in this discussion that the Boston Police Department has had a discussion going on about stepping out of, is it civil service? Is that what it is? Civil service?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the plan regarding the?
Well, we had recommended that under the as the task force, because civil service really locks you in, and I forget what the number is, but really it's so many cities and towns in the Commonwealth already opted out of civil service. So Boston is one of the few that stayed in, and it really limits you in terms of your hiring, your discipline, and so on and so forth. I wouldn't mind if civil service stayed on as well, but civil service needs to be entirely revamped, and brought up to the 21st century, right? Because civil service started off, I think they said over 100 years ago or whatever. So all of these things that we're still beholden to these rules from all this time ago, I mean, I don't mind. Civil service in and of itself is not a bad thing. It just has gotten corrupt like everything else and just needs a whole revamp from the rooter to the zooter.
Right, it needs to be updated is what you're saying. It needs to be updated. Yeah. Okay, that's good. Thanks for riding shotgun with me this morning. And we'll talk more about the station and things that are happening here at the station that I want to go public. So we'll talk again. Thank you, Jamal.
All right, peace.
All right, bye-bye. This is Pastor Bruce Wall. Coming up at the 9 o'clock hour will be Pastor Randy Neighbors and myself. We'll give you an update regarding our friend Pastor Stephen Davis and his medical status. It amazes me that every time we were on the air, Dr. Davis would be updating us